Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Referee Earp's Frontier Life, the kind of man that defeated Bob Fitzsimmons. The subheadline is A Remarkable Record Has He. In strife and bloodshed, nearly all his life has been passed, and his family is one that has helped to make the wild and woolly West a name as well as a tradition. Not an honest hair in his head, so says one that has known him for years. It says, Wyatt Earp is attracting widespread attention at present as the man that had the nerve to deprive Fitzsimmons of a well-earned victory. Alfred H. Lewis, writing in the New York Journal, has this to say of him. In the early 80s, I was a neighbor of the Earp family. They abode at Tombstone, Arizona, and did much toward making that hamlet a thrilling place of residence. Wyatt Earp is one of 4 brothers, 2 of whom, Julian and Warren Earp, are happily dead and out. The 4 Earp brothers were abundant about Tombstone in 1881, 1882, and 1883. The community in 1883 assumed a positive attitude towards the Earps and presented a front to that household made up in the main of Winchesters and Colt 6-shooters. The Earps construed this into a lack of confidence on the part of the Tombstone public. They resented it by shaking the dust of Tombstone from their feet forever. They migrated to the Gunnison country. They were subsequently run out of Gunnison, and Wyatt and Virgil Earp went to California, where Wyatt the other night refereed the Fitzsimmons-Sharkey fight. The 4 Earps were named respectively Virgil, Wyatt, Warren, and Julian. They had a sister Jessie, who was with them in Tombstone. Of her, as novelists say, more anon. Virgil was the oldest Earp, Wyatt the wisest, Warren the most foolhardy, Julian the bravest, and Jessie the most loving. As a result, Wyatt and Virgil lived to get out of Tombstone and the Gunnison in advance of public opinion and the bullets that expressed it, while Warren was killed in Tombstone and Julian in the Gunnison by Ike Clanton, who had married his sister Jessie, and whom Wyatt and Virgil subsequently killed at Socorro, and Jessie, the loving one, wedded Ike Clanton, with whom her 4 brothers had a blood feud at the time. Wyatt Earp, and for that matter all the Earps, were gunfighters and men of prompt and bitter courage. Wyatt Earp himself is credited with 10 men, one his own brother-in-law, Clanton. Every one of the Earps had killed his men, not man, and were famed in Tombstone and in the Cochise country round about as qualified to pull and make a center shot in less than 1/10 of a second. They had all filed the sights from their 6-shooters when I knew them in 81 and 82. And eschewing the intervention of a trigger, were prone to that prowess known as fanning their pistols in a fight, whereby a Colt 6-shooter becomes for the time being a miniature Gatling. In the early 80s, there were 2 factions in Tombstone. Virgil and Wyatt Earp led one, the stage robbers. Johnny Bain, Ike Clanton, and Jack Ringo led the other, the rustlers. The stage robbers were in politics Republican and stood up stages and plundered express companies for a livelihood. The rustlers were Democrats and devoted themselves to cattle stealing, murder, whiskey, and faro bank as steady pursuits. In these days, Johnny Bain was sheriff of Cochise County, and Virgil Earp was the marshal of Tombstone. Bain, as stated, belonged to the Cow Thief Democracy Party, while Earp robbed stages and voted with the Republicans. The Earps, Wyatt, Virgil, Warren, and Julian, had treated themselves to many a killing. But there was no money in murder, nothing but relaxation, so they devoted themselves to holding up the stage. Virgil Earp had a combination with Barshall Williams, then the Wells Fargo agent at Tombstone. When big money went out on the stage, Williams tipped it off to Virgil Earp. The holdups were then planted in a convenient canyon. When the stage came along, at the word of "hands up," Warren Earp, who was a stage company guard, meekly put his hands over his head. Then the holdups went through the express pouches and boxes like the grace of heaven through a camp meeting. There was never any shooting. It was from all standpoints a family affair on the part of the Earps. Often they got as much as $25,000. After a robbery, the Earps made further money enlisting themselves with a posse comitatus and chasing themselves. Virgil, as marshal, would enlist Wyatt, Warren, and Julian, together with Curly Bill, their cousin, and hunt the holdups. It was a great industry, and by thus playing both ends against the middle, first robbing the stage and then proceeding to chase the robbers, Virgil, Wyatt, Warren, and Julian Earp waxed opulent. But it all came out on them. Williams, the Wells Fargo agent, confessed. It happened thus. It was a gala occasion in the Birdcage Opera House in Tombstone. Sheriff Jimmy Bain, Ike Clannon, Ringo, and others of the cow thieves had boxes on one side. The Earps, Curly Bill, Doc Holliday, Nixon, and others of the stage robbers had boxes opposite. When one side cheered a performer, the others hissed, and as whiskey flowed, the spirits of both gangs mounted. At last, Ike Clannon took umbrage because Nixon opposite reposed his boot on the rail of his box. Clanton was too far away for conversation, so in testimony of his condemnation of Nixon's action, he pulled his gun and put a bullet through Nixon's offensive foot. It came off the box rail. Much good and enthusiastic shooting ensued. 12 men were killed and wounded. None of the Earps, however. Williams, the confederate of Virgil and Wyatt Earp in the stage robbing, was badly shot up. He expected to die and confessed. At this, Wyatt Earp and his three brothers, with others of the gang, fortified themselves in an old dobe house on the edge of Tombstone. Bain and the cow thieves put in what time they could spare from faro bank and theft in besieging them. The siege was a standoff. At last, Warren Earp, the foolhardy one, healed himself and came down from the dobe fortress to play faro bank. He had just set a stack of blues on the king open when a cow thief listlessly put a bullet through his head. Thus died the first of the Earps. There was no more fighting then, and at last the Earps were driven out of Tombstone and into the Gunnison. Their sister Jessie went with them. Ike Clanton, one of the Democrats and cow thieves, followed them to Colorado and eloped with Jessie. This was too much for the Republican stage-robbing blood of Wyatt Earp and his brothers. They pursued. They ran Clanton and his bride into a mine tunnel. The miners interfered. There must be fair play. Ike Clanton offered to fight Virgil, Wyatt, or Julian Earp for their sister. Julian took it up. The two shot it out with pistols, and Julian was killed. It was then that Wyatt and Virgil Earp lined out for the slope. Just before they left Tombstone, the Earps killed the two McLaurys, Billy Clanton and Frank Stillwell. It was these killings, rather than the Wells Fargo holdups, that caused the public to lay for them. Wyatt Earp was prominent, with his gun, in the Cochise County seat war between Tombstone and Charleston of long ago. His last public appearance in a gunplay was in the middle 80s, when Mayor Kelly ran Luke Short out of Dodge City, and the fugitive Luke summoned Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Charlie Bassett, Bat Masterson, and Shotgun Collins to aid him in the recovery of his own. They reinstated Luke, and he and Kelly divided Dodge City between them. Wyatt Earp must now be 45 years old. He is grim, game, and deadly. He never took water, but he doesn't kill as he used to. Age has cooled his blood. Many wounds have brought caution. Moreover, the communities he honors with his presence won't stand those gaieties which marked Wyatt Earp's earlier career. And Wyatt has grown to like a quiet life. As a result, he has not taken a scalp for years. His business just now should be that of a blackleg gambler, crooked as a dog's hind leg. If there are any honest hairs in his head, they have grown since he left Arizona. He is exactly the sort of man to referee a prize fight if a steal is meditated and a job put up to make the wrong man win. Wyatt Earp has all the nerve and dishonesty needed to turn the trick. The mere name of Wyatt Earp as referee shows that Fitzsimmons was against a hard game. This story came from the great state of Pennsylvania, being reported in the Philadelphia Times of December 6, 1896. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.